everyone, and we are here in Cebu Metropolitan Cathedral, the Cathedral of the Archdiocese of Cebu. And welcome to our special documentation about a classical period wherein we will be featuring the different kinds of painting,
music, dance,
architecture,
sculpture, literature,
drama, and theater. I am Joseph Angelo Salalon.
And I'm Jessica Damolo.
And I'm Davian Medico, only here on
Tatak, klasikal. Museum of Cebu, and behind me is the sum of their paintings. And this one is called the Passage of Ebony, an acrylic canvas. And this reminds me of the classical paintings. Just before 500 BCE, as the archaic period ended, oblique and the other noble views of the human body and limbs became established in Greek sculpture and vase painting. A revolution which was the first step towards illusionism. Polygnotus of Thoses, an island in the North Aegean, was the first Greek painter master. Much of his work was done in the near Athens, soon after 480 BCE, and was still seen more than 600 years later. His figures were celebrated for their expressions of character, and it seems probable that they had the aristocratic detachment of the best high classical art. Pliny attributes to him various innovations, most of which had occurred already even in vase painting, but another important innovation did appear in Polygnotus' pictures. This was the representation, or rather recognition, of death by setting figures at different levels. A greater height denoting a greater distance and letting them thrust towards or backwards out of the plane of the surface. Guys, we are here in the Basilica de Santo Niño de Cebu, and in this basilica, the Holy Infant Jesus is venerated. And as you can see at my back, you can see the basilica or the Church of Santo Niño, and it is noted for its beautiful architecture. I remember the classical architecture. Classical architecture is notable for the dignity, severity, and masculine quality of its foremost buildings, resulting from the subordination of plan, composition, and detail, and the unity of the whole, and the charity and simplicity with which elements were used. The style of classical architecture started almost when formal writing was created. There is no specific date to my knowledge that the era began or ended, but a lot of this type of architecture was found all around continental Europe. Many times, this type of architecture was either one or two things. One of the reasons that houses were built were for a basic need or shelter. They could have built for gods or a place of worship. As time passed, the buildings became more elaborate and more detailed. Some civilization grew from stone and mud huts to huge temples as well as tombs like the Egyptians.
late 19th century ballet in Russia was a stagnant form wherein the virtuoso demonstration had become an end of itself, while the narrative was enlivened only by the character dances. This ballet then led to other ballets and eventually what the word considers the classical ballet.
In 1869, Tita took the position of the ballet master chef in imperial charge. In his role of leadership, Tita created many multi- and single-act ballet presentations to the imperial stages of Russia. In 1869, he went to Moscow and created Don Quixote for the ballet of the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow. Classical style, body shapes are clear and elegant. Groups are designed in straight lines, circles, squares, and triangles, usually in perfectly symmetrical arrangement.
Soloists are always placed in the middle or above the ensemble. The total expressive manner is orderly and obvious, and the keynote is formal beauty.
Classical music. The classical period saw the introduction of a form which has dominated instrument composition to the present day. The sonata form emerged from the rounded binary form Baroque during this period. If Baroque music is notable for its textural intricacy, classical music is characterized by near obsession with its structural clarity. The search for the intellectual freedom is the main principle of this new age of enlightenment. More spontaneous musical expression was preferred. New genres discovered that completed the transformation from Baroque to the classical era. Baroque composers also wrote sonatas. The classical style of sonata is completely distinct. The classical period reached its culmination with a massacre of symphonies, sonatas, and string quartets with three great composers of the Venice school. This was Franz Joseph Haydn, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and Ludwig van Beethoven. Classical literature. Greek drama evolved from the song and dance from the sermonist honoring Dionysius at Athens.
The writing of history came of age in Greece with the rich and diffuse work of Herodotus, the precise and expressive accounts of Thucydides, and the rushing narrative of Xenophon. The philosophical writing of unprecedented breadth was produced during this brief period of Athenian literature. The work of Plato and Aristotle have an incalculable effect on the shaping of Western thought.
Greek oratory of immense importance in the ancient world was also perfect at this time. Classical Greek literature is said to have ended with the death of Aristotle. The greatest writers of the classical era had certain characteristics in common: economically of word, direct expression, subtlety of thought, and intention to reform.
Now we're here. Classical sculpture. The form of classical sculpture became fluid and natural, and the stylization of the archaic art gave way to realistic figures which emanated the illusion of moving through space. During the classical period, the Greek artists replaced the stiff vertical figures of the archaic period with three-dimensional snapshots of figures in action. While the archaic sculpture appeared static, the classical statues held dynamic, possessed bursting with potential energy. The overall pattern of immobile muscle were developed into a complex universe of tension and relaxation. In the art of Greece, during the period, the characteristic smile of the archaic sculpture was replaced by a solemn facial expression. Even in sculpture which depict violent and passionate scenes, The faces betray no expression of any kind. The reason for this is that ancient Greeks believed the suppression of emotion was a noble characteristic of all the civilized men, while the public display of human emotion was a sign of barbarism. It was clear that an artist of the classical period of Greece that the whole depends on harmony of the parts which comprise it, and that each part.
Classical drama and theater. The historical sources for the theatrical performances in the classical age focus largely on tragedy as the hub of the early dramatic activity, even if its preeminence probably looks clearer in hindsight than it seemed in the day.
Satyr play, in particular, a farcical rendition of myths, were more often treated seriously, which featured a chorus of rowdy, irreverent satyrs, emerged early. The tradition of Greek theater, though exactly how early is not clear. That surviving classical drama do not refer to it often or call its extensive utilization, argues it was not particularly complex in its design or application. If through, perhaps, the classical age, the same did not apply to the post-classical Greek world.
Three tragedians emerged from the 5th century before Christ era as the principal practitioner of the classical Greek tragedy drama: Euripides, Aeschylus, and Sophocles.
So that's it! After a long adventure of fun
and enjoyment,
I hope you all learned something from our special documentation. This has been Joseph Angelos P. Halalon,
Jessica Damolo,
and Davian Medico, only here on
Tatak, klasikal. Tama.